I call the honourable member Phil Twice.
It certainly is an unorthodox approach to lawmaking to pass a primary piece of legislation that basically hands to the minister the unfettered right to write regulations to deal with the problem. And I don't think, that's right, in a private member's bill. I don't think that the Honourable David Parker was being too uncharitable when he described in less than flattering tones the final product of this extensive piece of work by the member and by the Commerce Select Committee. It is a strange thing to bring effectively a hollow bill to the House that hands to the minister the ability to write regulations to solve the purported problem. Now, it's pretty clear, Mr. Chairman, looking at reading the report that goes with this member's bill, sir, that the committee was overcome by the complexity. And if that's the case, really, if they were overcome by the complexity of this issue, it might have been a bit more sensible. It might have been a bit more sensible to go back to the drawing board rather than proceed with this hollow bill. I wanted to focus on two issues in particular, and following on from the member's contribution. The cost of donation. The cost of donation is the critical factor in this. The cost of donation is the key factor that this bill is setting out to regulate. But the reality is, for almost all fundraisers working in New Zealand today, that when you make that first phone call, that first direct mail letter, or that first conversation on the street, that is the beginning of what the charity hopes will be a lifelong relationship with that donor. And in all cases, that first contact with the donor, the first donation, is always very expensive. Now, what I'd like to know is why this bill doesn't cover direct mail. Because actually what most charities do is they capture their donors, their prospects, for the first time through direct mail fundraising. And it's the first cheque that gets written or the first credit card transaction that is the beginning of the lifelong donor relationship. Now, the cost of that direct mail transaction for most charities is about 100%. Most charities would consider that to be money well spent if they can capture a donor in that first donation at a cost of 100%. So why isn't that included in this bill? And I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the way that fundraising works and the way that the fundraising business model for almost all charities in this country. And that misunderstanding is captured in this bill and the so-called complexity that led to a non-bill being brought to this House. The other thing is that it's inexplicable to me why the bill focuses on face-to-face fundraising and telemarketing, and why not charitable events? Because charitable events are one of the main ways that charities also strike up a relationship with new donors. And the cost ratio for charitable events is generally very, very high. Far higher than the cost ratios for street-based face-to-face fundraising or telemarketing. So why doesn't the bill include charitable events within its ambit? So I invite the member in the chair. I invite the member in the chair to explain why this bill doesn't cover fundraising events or direct mail fundraising. Because in the fundraising business model that almost every charity in this country uses, those two things are just as important, actually, or more important than street-based face-to-face fundraising or telemarketing. So I know we're supporting this bill, and it is out of a sense of charity to the members. No one disagrees with the principles of accountability, disclosure and transparency. But I'm sad to say this bill is an example of woolly thinking, and really it needs further work.
Mr. Chairman.
I call the honourable member
I'll let
Michael
him.
Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.